Welcome to Labstream AI, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, business resilience, and the future of innovation. I'm your host, Mayrak Hamza. Each week, we bring you conversations with thought leaders, founders, and industry experts who are redefining how technology shapes business, finance, and society. Today, joining us again is Mark Weiner from BizComGlobal to share with us about his book, When Plan B Fails. Let's dive in. How are you, Mark?
Hey, Merrick, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. In your book, you emphasize that leaders often underestimate how fragile their plan B really is. I don't want to get into the story about the airport in chapter 1 or 2 that it was, but can you share a real world example from your research where overconfidence in a backup plan led to a major failure?
Absolutely. So here's what happens. Number one, people come up and they go, well, people will know what to do when it's a problem, but they don't. And failure often starts with something simple like communication. That executive team, they're working day to day under how do I get something done? But now we're talking about something that is a crisis that's unfolding. And whether that crisis is the CEO ended up getting sick and in ICU and they have all of the passwords to all of their systems because they didn't trust the people below them, whether it was a cyber incident and their data has been ransomware, whether it was data is being stolen and we now have medical data out there for everywhere, or even a more interesting piece when all of a sudden um, uh, auto dealers can't transact their business on a day-to-day basis because their upstream vendor, their systems are down. They can't
Maybe.
sell. They can't sell
Mhm.
cars. They can't sell repairs. They can't. They don't know what parts they have.
Well, what
They're
about
frozen.
airports? Tell us about the airport story. I was reading your book, and there was a July 17th. I was like, you were talking about blue screens, and you were going from Raleigh. You got rerouted. Tell me
Yeah.
about that story and what was that all about?
So I was at a cybersecurity conference in Dallas. I'm in the airport getting ready to go home, and the interesting story there is what happened at the beginning had nothing to do with a problem, other than standard. The weather was bad. The East Coast was starting to close. And the reality is, my plane was now delayed twice coming out of Dallas. Atlanta was messed up. The, Tampa was messed up. Orlando was messed up. JFK was messed up as we're going up because it was showered with rain and storms. So air traffic control is a mess. And then what happens? So they go, well, we can get you to. In this case, it ended up being Salt Lake City. For those that are geographically challenged, going from Dallas to Raleigh via Salt Lake City is a strange method.
How many
But they
hours
said
did that take?
that was probably a 4 hour or 5 hour diversion. But they're like, we can get you on a red eye home. Okay, fine, I'll take that. I'll get home, no problem. We'll avoid the East Coast, and we'll get in about 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, and we'll bypass all this mess. So I'm in Salt Lake City, and all of a sudden you start seeing things like the monitors in the airport start to go blue, and it's not just one; it's multiples. But they still board us. They're able to get us boarded on the plane. It's like 11 o'clock at night and we're sitting on the plane for about 20 minutes. The captain comes on and says, "Oh, there's going to be a little delay. We're trying to balance the aircraft. We're not able to get to our weight balancing app." And comes back on another 15 minutes later. We're still not able to get it to work. And then clearly the issue's bigger than everyone wants to talk about. And at some point, say, we're going to have everybody get off the plane. I was that close to getting home. And so
It
we're
sounds
now in
like
the
that day. Yeah, what was that day? That was like a doomsday at the airports. I feel like I
oh,
remember that day.
Yeah, it was crazy. So this is when CrowdStrike happened. It was CrowdStrike, which is a cybersecurity company, and impacted Delta as well as thousands of other companies, where they made some system changes in an attempt to protect the machines, but they screwed something up and pushed code and changed the underlying BIOS of all the computers, and the computers couldn't boot.
So you had no tickets, no way to get home.
So it was a mess. And so all of a sudden we're there, and the first it was one machine, then it was another machine, then all of a sudden all of the gates and all of the monitors, everything's off the monitors.
Wow. It's like
They're
an
just blue
apocalypse.
screen of death.
Yeah, it was like an apocalypse. You're thinking we're not going to make it.
Right. So it's now this interesting scenario, and nobody knows what's happening. The airlines can't tell you anything because they don't know. And then
Wow.
and then it's now late enough. There's an announcement um, at the airport saying nobody should leave the terminal. We don't know when airplanes are going to leave yet, but TSA is closing. You
That's
leave the
scary.
terminal, you won't be able to get back in.
That's scary. You don't know what's going on. No one knew that it was the CrowdStrike thing at that time. I remember that
Nobody
day.
knew anything. Yes, it was crazy.
That's
So
mayhem.
so so everybody's sleeping in the terminals, and so there's thousands of people sleeping on the benches and the floors in the terminals. We're all
Wow.
creating this really good camaraderie. But so it was what it was. But over time, and everyone's getting frustrated, and everybody's upset, and of course the next morning everything's opening up. There are people drinking at 8 a.m. in the morning, and every it was an interesting camaraderie that everybody ended up having in the airport. And this went on and on and on and on, and you're hearing more from the news, and you're realizing what's going on, and and I'm even able to say this is what it is, but can't do anything about it.
You write about illusion of preparedness in your book. What are some blind spots leaders consistently overlook when planning for crisis? Clearly, the airports weren't ready for this. And how can they confront those blind spots more honestly?
So I think part of the issue is sometimes the only way we've planned to get around something is because we have an electronic service. But if all of a sudden that service is down, I can't get to it to tell you what I was supposed to do. We haven't trained staff to deal with it. In the book, we start talking about, in this case, an amalgamation of a lot of auto dealerships where most of the people have never tried to sell a car by hand. They've always had these tools. They don't know what inventory they have. They didn't. They've never had to take a deposit. They've none of this. All of the systems were always there. But in the scenario there, and this went on for I don't know the CDK scenario. It probably went on for 2 weeks, on and off. That hampered car dealers. And so the ones that did better were ones that often had some um people like me that had gray in their beards or lost their hair or whatever it was, that remembered, oh, we've got forms in the drawer. Oh, go pull all those titles. Let's put them on a board. Let's start laying out how can we sell something if we don't know what we have.
That makes me think of that chapter about the storm in Houston. Was that the deal in Houston and they everything went underwater? What was that?
It
What
did.
was that about? Yeah, what was that? That was the
Right.
insurance thing, Lone Star Insurance or something?
Right. So you had an insurance adjuster who was supposed to be adjudicating claims for the insurance companies, and yet they were underwater,
Literally underwater, like
literally
their
under.
offices, their computers were. I'm shocked they didn't have anything backed up in the cloud or anything. It's like the adjusters, I heard they couldn't even take the conversation with the claimants because there was no information, there was no access.
Right, exactly. And they actually had two remote employees that had some information, but they didn't have enough. Most of it was sitting on. They still had their servers in their office, local,
Underwater.
underwater.
Local, yeah. That blew my mind that they didn't have their things and the reputation gone in minutes. You talk about how everything can be built over 20 years and it just takes one incident just to lose the trust of your customer because of this.
It's very true. It's how do you understand the impacts of actions or reactions? Poor communication. Um, One of the things I see, and often that people come to the forefront, and we're going to tell people about something. We're going to do a press conference, and we're going to give information that's blatantly untrue. I see it all the time because we want us to look better. So I'm going to tell you something that I clearly know is wrong. And anyone who knows anything about it goes, well, it can't be that.
Wow.
But
Disinformation, like
but but we
legitimately just,
but we're giving this information because we think it's going to make people feel better. And
I
and so
believe that.
I see that in corporate communications all the time. But there are other ways to do this. It's building. But if you don't have a communications plan, how are you going to communicate with your internal team? How are you going to communicate with your vendors? How are you going to communicate with your stockholders? How are you going to communicate with your investors? How are you going to communicate with your customers? What types of things are you going to tell them? Do you have pre-made templates on some of this stuff so that it's easier to get out and have some of this conversation?
Adaptability is a recurring theme in your book. And from your perspective, what separates leaders from and organizations that bounce back stronger from those that crumble when their contingency plan fails? Kind of like that Lone Star Insurance Company you're talking
Absolutely.
about.
So I think here's what happens first. Rarely in a crisis do you have all of the information.
True.
And so you need things are going to unfold, and things are often going to unfold with incorrect and misinformation. And the larger the organization, often people are holding back information because they don't want to displease their superiors. They don't want them to know something because maybe it'll just get fixed. Or maybe it's really not that way. Or they're going to rush to the forefront and go, it's this.
Yeah, they don't want to be scared. They don't want to be wrong. Actually, people don't want to be wrong and look dumb, so
Right.
they rather
And the
stay
problem is they
quiet
often
and
are.
just let it pass. Wow.
Right. And so adaptability. What are we talking about in adaptability? When if you're driving from California to New York, and you sit there and you go, I'm going to go this road all the way from here to here. I'm going to make this turn over here and this turn over here. And if something happens along that route, you've got to make a change. It's helpful to know the roads a little bit so you know, okay, in general, I can go from here to there. And GPS has been a wonderful lifesaver for many people that were unable to read a map. But what happens when all of a sudden you're in Kansas and the storm was bad and all of a sudden your GPS isn't coming up?
Yeah, I didn't know. You mentioned, I think it was Darwin or Roosevelt in your book about pivoting and that adaptability to pivot. And, that's really what it's about for survival.
It
One
is.
powerful idea when in Plan B fails is that failures can create unexpected opportunities. Can you share a story when Plan B failed actually and led to a long-term like growth or innovation?
Absolutely. So when you start looking at what happens, I mean, let's do something really simple. The reality is the economy is bad. Okay, economy is bad. Some businesses are going out. Some businesses are surviving. But the reality is when I'm able to pivot and serve the customers the way they need to be served today, I can latch on to an opportunity because I see it, because I fulfill it, and then my company will potentially grow because of that. And other companies who say, well, things are not so good right now. I'm not going to invest in advertising. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save some money. I'm going to turn off some lights in the factory so I'm not using extra people. Oh, I'm going to get rid of half my staff because maybe I don't need them. But if you don't take advantage of opportunities that are sitting in front of you, you're going to fail. And by being able to pivot and serve the people that are in need today with the things that they need, well, you can capitalize on that. And whether that's a sales strategy, whether that's a communications component of because I'm being truthful in what we're doing, because whether it's a hey customer, I understand we did not serve you well. Some bad things happened. Let me tell you how we're changing for the future, and we want to make sure your voice is heard as we're making that change. Doesn't that make you feel good when something like that happens?
For
and
sure.
so
I mean,
and so the ability to be resilient, the ability to communicate, and the ability to change based on the opportunities that are in front of you have a direct impact on what you're able to do as a business.
if you had to give one piece of advice to CEOs and founders that are preparing for the moment, even when their backup plan collapses, what would it be?
Make sure your team actually knows how to work together in a crisis. Simulate it, prepare, test it, test your battle plans. I mean, so in the military we talk about battle plans, but the reality is no different. When something bad happens, are you prepared? Who's going to run that scenario? when something happens? Do you have the right finances in place that you could weather an event? You really need to contingency test many, many things, and you need to make sure your team is ready to work together under pressure.
Yeah, it sounds like they need to go to your incident response experiences that you have going on.
Absolutely, they're all and they're both intense and a lot of fun.
Yeah, you have one coming up in Chicago, right? In August, or is that next month?
So we just ran one in RTP in July. We are
Hmm.
planning our next one probably in November in Detroit.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure out what goes on the schedule from there.
Yeah, I love that. I think that could be a TV show, really, like cybersecurity, like real time threats, like
Oh,
live TV.
absolutely,
I
it would
think
be a
that's
lot of
so
fun.
fun. That it does. It sounds a lot of fun. Mark, thank you so much for sharing about your new book, When Plan B Fails. It's clear you need multiple backup plans and adaptability and being able to pivot. You're the guy who knows how to do it. For our listeners who want to learn more about Mark's book, you can go to whenplanbfails.com. It's whenplanbfails.com. And thanks for tuning in to Labstream AI. I'm Mayrak Hamza, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. It was great to see you again.
Great to see you likewise, always.
There. Bye bye.
Bye bye.